Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 990. My opponent started off with e4 here, and I went with knight f6, the Alekhine's defense, and he played the goofball gambit, bishop c4. So this is a real gambit. It's in the opening book here. You can probably find a book on it or something. It's not particularly good, and you should just go ahead and take the pawn, even though he gets the pawn back. So you might question whether it's a gambit at all, because this is pretty forced. You take, the queen comes out with check, and now you have a choice. Either g6 or king g8. They seem to be equally good in the eyes of the chess engine. And the same thing is going to happen. After g6, the queen can come to this square or this square, and then the check will be followed by queen takes knight. So White gets his piece back, and White has disrupted Black's development. But it still cannot be recommended. Black has the bishop pair and has an extra pawn in the center, and there's no big threat at this point. That's the problem with this gambit, is there's not a big follow-up. So even though White seemed to get some activity to start with, we're on move 6, and it's my turn, and it seems like White's string has run out at this point. So this leaves Black slightly better. The chess engine is giving an advantage to Black already. Maybe not a whole pawn advantage, but somewhere in that range. It's like the opening advantage has switched from White to Black. That kind of advantage. So I played the move queen f6 here. I wanted to play d5, but I was worried about queen takes e6. Of course, d5 can be played because the bishop defends e6. So I totally overlooked that during the game and played queen f6. But it turns out this is a good move too. It was like the second or third choice of the chess engine. You know, it's nice actually to get a queen out to counter your opponent's potentially rampaging queen. You don't want to fall behind in development and give him lots of checks, and the queen covers a lot of spaces over here, but I could have just played d5 immediately. Anyway, at this point we're out of the book. Let's see, he continued with knight f3. I went d5 now, dropped his queen back to e3, and went knight c6. So here I was actually thinking about the move c5. That's the chess engine recommendation. It's you want to build up a big center and control all these squares. So it makes a lot of sense. I just was a little worried because it is a gambit situation, and you don't want to fall behind in development when you're playing against a gambit. That can be fatal, but it turns out c5 is safe in this case. So anyway, I kept developing pieces, so just being a little bit too cautious, I suppose, because c5 was a better move. And that's again, that's the thing about this gambit, is there's no huge follow-up for White here. So my king is actually not in any danger, and I have time to unravel. So here is actually White's first mistake, other than selecting this oddball gambit. He could have played d4 here and taken advantage of my slow move and got a playable position. The game would probably continue in a similar fashion. You know, I'll bring my bishop out, I'll make room for my king and bring the rook over, and I'll still have some edge, but not as strong an edge as I could have had if I had just played c5 there. But anyway, he played c3 and gives me back that advantage. Let's see, I play bishop d6, he goes d5 now. Oh no, he castled first. Sorry, I go bishop d7, preparing to bring a rook over. He goes d4 now. I said d5, but I meant d4. And I went h6. Like I said, I have this plan of bringing my king out and bringing the rook over. I think that was okay, but the chess engine does prefer the immediate rook e8, which is certainly a very logical move as well. But this still keeps an advantage to White, or to Black. Let's see, he went knight bd2, went king h7, went queen d3 check. So here, queen g6 was not the best move. And the chess engine prefers either g6, blocking that way and avoiding the queen trade, or if I'm allowing the queen trade, play queen f5. And that way, after the queen trade, I actually have a better position, because this pawn will come forward and clamp down on the yeah, I think it's just about the pawn giving me more space. I already control the e4 square, so having extra control of the e4 square doesn't seem to matter too much. But I think my pawns will be connected. I won't have this weak backwards pawn anymore, and it gives me excellent chances in that endgame. After queen g6, it says white should go ahead and trade, and black is still a little better, but it's more work here. So this was certainly white's best chance to get something close to an even game. But he avoided the queen trade, typical for gambit play. You want to keep the queens on, so logical in its way. And now I do start to bring my rooks into the game, get the rook to f8. And he played knight h4. That's a second mistake. He should go knight e5 here. He eventually plays knight e5, but at the time he plays it, he's already losing material. Here he can play it and get a pawn, a strong pawn here on e5. I have to drop the bishop back. Still have that advantage of the bishop pair, but he's taken a little bit of space from me. I do have a very solid center here, but he does have a square here for his knight. Well, I'll be able to play c5 to chase the knight away, so I guess that's not a danger. Anyway, still an advantage to black, but that's the way white should play it. Instead, he played knight h4, and this runs into trouble, and we saw this in the game. So it's a combination of not trading queens. Well, he played that slow move c3. He didn't trade queens when he had the chance in the knight h4, and I think the game is actually lost from this point forward. I played queen f6. That's one of the good choices there. Get out of the way of the g-pawn with the tempo hitting the knight. And then he played knight d f3, which is digging the hole deeper. Let's see. He could have tried queen d3. And this would still be an advantage to black, but it slows me down a little bit. I would play g6 to block the check. He drops the knight back. He can actually bring the other knight in this time. I can step aside with the king. Let's see, he can develop with bishop e3, and I can push forward with g5, and we get into a similar kind of situation as we had in the game, where he's going to have to sacrifice on e5 here, sacrifice a pawn in order to unwind from his position. But anyway, that's the best he can do at this point. When he brings us over first, it just makes the whole thing go faster. I get g5 in immediately, whereas in the line, the computer was suggesting he was able to slow that pawn push down for a move or two. Now he plays the check, which is a reasonable move. Yeah, that was the suggestion of the engine, I think, at that point. I step aside, and he finds the only way to save his knight, which is to play knight e5. And I suppose I could have taken his knight. Oh, no, my bishop is hanging. That's right. So I take the knight. He takes back with a fork. I take back. So this is all pretty forced. And knight f3. And here I was wondering about various things, like considering even just leaving the bishop there and bringing a rook over. But dropping the bishop back was definitely the chess engine recommendation, and it's much stronger than any of the other moves. Just keep the bishop pair, keep pushing pawns forward in the center, and black really has a dominating position as well as an extra pawn, and the chess engine is giving like a +3 or -3 in this case advantage to black here. Let's see. So he tried h4. I pushed on with g4. I could have actually taken, but I don't want to open things up here. So g4, and this is good too because it actually wins the h-pawn. So here during the game, I was worried about knight h2. I hadn't decided how to defend this pawn. I didn't like, this move, which would allow his queen to take here. Although that also turns out to be good for me because his knight is completely trapped here. But the chess engine pointed out something I should have noticed right away. After knight h2, I can just take this pawn So yeah, there's no problem with knight h2. Um, that so that's not giving any relief to white. He chose knight to d4, and back up. He chose knight to d4, and the chess engine rated those two moves about equally. I think it may have slightly preferred knight h2, but that's a pretty horrible move if I can just take a pawn and threaten to win his knight there. So knight d4. Let's see. I played c6. Right here, once again, I could actually take that pawn, so I overlooked that. I play c6, and now he defends the pawn, but I still just have a winning position. So let's just go forward a few moves as we get to the end. All this is pretty straightforward. There was nothing really that white could do here. And then when he played b4, that allows a mate in 3. There's just no stopping the mate. That was always there's always that slight question in the back of your mind: is this really a forced mate? But in fact, it really is. So, but the only way to avoid it is to sacrifice material. So the chess engine is recommending this line: knight f4 check, give up this way, and then bishop d4, trying to take advantage. But I can block with my bishop, and then say bring a rook over, and I just take this off, and I'm just a piece up and still attacking. So simple win from there. He played b4, which just ignores the mate threat, and so I went ahead and played it. Maybe he was relying on this threat here to keep my queen tied down, but this is just a check. I step aside with the king, and there's no stopping the mate. Let's see, is there another check here? No, he just plays another move, and I made him. That's it. That's true. He could sacrifice the knight, but even that doesn't work because I have the mate on h1 as well as the mate on g2. So he resigned at this point. Anyway, it was a fun game. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.